all right, especially when you are using financial derivatives, all right. All right, so here it gives you some guidance on what should be in the prospectus under 8.3, all right, in terms of the methods you use to determine the scheme's exposure, either on a commitment basis or a relative value at risk basis, on absolute value at risk basis, right? Then 8.4 talks about semi-annual and annual report, how to calculate global exposure. And moving on, we talk about marketing material, right? And the details then are given to you in terms of the counterparty of financial derivatives, right? In terms of the semi-annual and annual report under 8.6a to d. Right, the EPM techniques, you recall what is EPM, right? Alright, so EPM techniques, the prospectus under 8.7a to e, then semi-annual and annual report under 8.8a to g. Okay. Alright, now very quickly then we move on to commodity exposures. That's 8.9. Right, commodity exposures under prospectus, the details are set out 8.9. Alright. And, well, let me just read to you this one. Where the scheme will have exposures to commodities, underline, through financial derivatives or investments referred. Right? In paragraph 210 or 212b of this appendix, the prospectus should include a description of the commodities which would be highly correlated and therefore treated as giving exposure to the same commodity when applying the limits in section 4 of appendix 5, index funds, and how such correlation is determined. Alright, so the requirements are set out and the guidance are set out for you. Alright, now if you turn to the next part there, Annex 1A, illustration of benchmark limit. I've done that for you in brief. I've referred to you, just take a look at that one. How do you look at benchmark limit? Alright, example 1. Right, assume that both A and B are not included in the relevant benchmark. Alright, then a scheme may invest up to 10% of its NAV in transferable securities issued by A, and then another 10% of its NAV in transferable securities issued by B. The scheme may invest up to 20% of its NAV in transferable securities issued by companies in this particular group. Right, that's how we look at it under example 1, then example 2, and then example 3. Okay, and below there is the Annex 1B, alternative approach for calculating exposure limit. Right, like we have said earlier before, the commitment method is recommended. Now we have the VAR method, the value at risk approach. Right. So these guidelines apply to a scheme which elects to use the VAR approach for calculating the scheme's exposure to financial derivatives arising from all the positions of the scheme's portfolio. For the avoidance of doubt, all EPM exposures as a result of reinvestment of cash collateral are to be included in the calculation of the value at risk method, right? Right. So all EPM exposures as a result of reinvestment of the cash collateral, right, are to be included in this calculation. Where an internal VAR model is used by the manager, there should be verification by an operationally independent party, underline that, of its VAR model or at appropriate frequency. All right, so that your model use is okay, is correct. All right, any material changes to the risk management process, well, you must inform the MAS 1 month in advance, right? So this is to make sure that your evaluation is up to date, up to the mark. Right, then calculation methodology in terms of paragraph 2. So you want to use the value at risk approach. The exposure of the scheme should be limited to A and B. Right, let me just read that to you. Where a reference portfolio or benchmark for a scheme can be determined, then the scheme should use a relative value at risk calculation, where the value at risk of the scheme should not be more than 1.5 times, right, the value at risk of the reference portfolio. The manager should explain the rationale for the reference portfolio or benchmark, right, used in the risk management process document submitted to the MAS. Okay, so that's 1. Now B, where there's no reference portfolio or benchmark for the scheme. Right? No reference portfolio, unlike A where there is a reference portfolio. In this case, under B, no reference portfolio, an absolute value at risk approach should be used. The global exposure of a scheme based on the absolute value at risk approach should generally not exceed 20% of its NAV. Alright, the choice of this absolute value at risk limit should be commensurate with the investment objective, approach, and investment universe of the scheme. The management should explain the rationale for the absolute value at risk limit used in the risk management process document submitted to the MAS. Under the value at risk approach, the following parameters should be used. One-tailed confidence level, 99%. One-tailed confidence level, 99%. Holding period, 1 month, 20 business days. Observation period, 1 year, 250 business days, unless the shorter period is justified. Right, by significant increase in volatility. Update of data quarterly. Calculation frequency daily. Alright, so the methodology is clearly set out there. A different confidence interval or holding period may be used with prior approval of the authority, provided a conversion is made to bring the value at risk to an equivalent level. Right? Then 3 talks about the stress test. Alright, rigorous program of stress test on the scheme at a frequency which is in line with the scheme's profile, minimum monthly. Alright? So you need to conduct stress tests. And this program should cover all risks having a on the scheme's NAV and all the correlation changes between the risk factors. Alright, aside from the stress test, there's also a need for back tests. Okay, should back test is a value at risk model with a frequency which is in line with the scheme's risk profile but at a minimum monthly. Alright, back testing is simply the comparison of the daily profit and loss, known as trading outcomes, with model generated risk. Alright, the back testing policy should conform to the given standard which is set out below. Alright, so here you cast your eye down the page, A to F. Alright, so those are the back test details that you need to go into it on your own. Alright, so that is in terms of the back testing report. Right. Now 4.3 says the manager should perform back tests using actual trading outcomes. Underline that, not simulated ones, actual trading outcomes. If there are significant back testing exceptions using the actual, I repeat, actual trading outcomes, the manager should implement additional risk measures to monitor its intraday trading in line with sound risk management practices. Right? This is key, underline that. All right. The following are some examples which may classify under the 3 exceptions categories described in 4.2a, 4.2e above. Right. All right. Look back at 4.2e, just at the top there. So basic integrity of the model. Right. Model accuracy can be improved. Market move in a fashion unanticipated by the model. That means this model is not so great. All right. So model accuracy can be improved. The risk management model is not assessing the risk of some of the instruments with sufficient precision. All right. Market move in a manner unanticipated by the model. Unanticipated by the model. Random chance. Very very low probability event. Market move by more than the model predicted was likely. Volatility was significantly higher than expected, or market did not move together as expected. That means the correlation was significantly different than what was assumed by the model. In other words, your model is not good, right? So therefore, 6.E is very important, right? Under your back test, 4.2E is important in terms of the exception generated by the model. All right, and the performance of the back test must use the actual trading outcomes. All right, and they give you a definition there under 4.4A to C, right, in terms of the exceptions to the model. Now then, very quickly, we take a look at the 4.5. The manager should classify its back testing outcomes into 3 zones depending on the number of exceptions arising from the back testing. Now here you see 1, 2, 3 column, zone, green, yellow, and red. Green zone, yellow zone, red zone. Alright, number of exceptions under your model is 0 exceptions all the way to 10 or more. And then the cumulative probability, right? So how do you read this thing, right? So the table defines green, yellow, and red to assess the back testing results of the scheme. Alright, so the boundaries shown in the table are based on a sample of 250 observations. Alright, and then they divide into 3 zones. And coming down, they give you some examples. I'll read to you 4.6. Huh? The manager should notify the authority within 3 business days, right? Whenever exceptions arise. In the event that the scheme enters the green zone. Alright, green zone, that means 4 or less exceptions. Then the manager need not make any changes to the value at risk model. That means your model is okay. Alright, it satisfies the model required. No exceptions under E1 to 3. Alright, so green is fine. Yellow zone, 5 to 9 exceptions. The manager is to investigate and propose to the MAS the remedial action. That means your model sucks, as it were, right? No good. 5 to 9. Red zone, 10 or more exceptions. The manager should stop adding new positions and wind down existing positions in order to reduce market risk. Alright, that means your value at risk model is not good. Right? When the scheme enters the red zone, pay attention to this one. The authority may require the scheme to revert to the commitment approach. Right? So when the scheme enters the red zone, right, meaning you have 10 or more exceptions, then not only must you stop adding new position, but wind down the existing position in order to reduce market risk. And once the scheme enters the red zone, then you need to revert back to the commitment approach. Alright. Then very quickly we look at 10, and that is in terms of the hedge funds. Alright, so in paragraph 4 talk about the single hedge funds. Alright, in terms of the minimum subscription requirement and what the manager has to do, and whether you can invest in other hedge funds. Right? 4.5 is important to note. A single hedge fund may only invest directly in another single hedge fund, which is not underlined, not a feeder scheme. Right? No further layer of feeding is allowed. Right? Then talk about management, talk about borrowing, and talk about dealings. Right? And in particular at 4.10, redemption proceeds should be paid to the participant who is a beneficial owner within 90 days. Alright, from the dealing date, the redemption request is accepted. Right, that covers single hedge funds. Okay. Then paragraph 5 talks about fund of hedge funds. Right. As before, there's a minimum subscription requirement. In this case, it's 20,000. All right. Whereas in the single hedge fund, you look at 4.1 is 100,000. All right. And then investment in another fund of hedge funds, right? So again, that under 5.2, and then 5.3 talk about diversification. Invest in at least 15 hedge funds. Does not have more than 8% allocated to a single hedge fund. So the details are there. So coming down the line, 5.4 talks about the manager. All right, same issues. All right, look at 5.6. Right, outsource a sub-manager. The sub-manager have at least 2 executives who each has at least 5 years experience in the management of hedge funds, or which at least 3 years should be in the management of the FOHFS. Okay, so the things are there. Risk management is under 5.7. And then the 5.9 talks about borrowing. Alright, again, they borrow on a temporary basis for redemption and bridging requirements. Alright, 5.11 should not exceed 3 months. And aggregate borrowing should not more than 25% of the FOHF NAV at the time borrowing is incurred. Dealing days, at least 1 regular dealing day per month, and then redemption. Right? Now then quickly, paragraph 6 is the capital guaranteed single hedge funds and FOHFs. Right? Similar things are being set up for you. And then paragraph 7 talk about disclosure requirements, right? Accounts, reports, frequency, right? Similar stuff. Now then lastly, if you look at paragraph 11, here we talk about capital guaranteed funds, which we have mentioned a little bit about. Alright, so if you have such a fund, then you take note of 2.1, where a scheme does not comply with the provisions of this appendix, it should not adopt the word guarantee, assured, insured, or warranty in its name or in its promotion and description. And such a scheme should not hold itself out as a capital guarantee fund in any communication relating to the scheme. Alright, this is to make sure that the manager and other relevant person they do not abuse the use of the word guarantor because of its connotation, right? Right. So again, you look at 3.2. Who is the eligible guarantor? 3.2 talk about eligible guarantor. So the eligible guarantor should be under A and B. Alright, in case of financial institution, minimum long-term rating of AA by Fitch, Moody, AA, and so forth, right? And then the long-term rating of the guarantor under 3.3, right? Alright, so it provides 3.2 for financial institution, 3.3 for any guarantor. The long-term rating of the guarantor is similar. Alright, but minimum long-term rating is A by Fitch, A by Moody's, and so on. Alright, then paragraph 4 talks about the guarantee itself. There must be a written agreement between the guarantor and the trustee. It must be unconditional guarantee, and so on. And of course, it must be for prudence sake. Advice should come from a lawyer, a qualified lawyer, a trained lawyer, right, to do up this guarantee and so forth, right, so that it's properly done. Alright, so paragraph 4.1 all the way to 4.8 talks about the guarantee, right? Then the last part there, paragraph 5, talk about notification to participants. Alright, so guarantee applies only on any particular date or after a specified period of time. Manager should notify the participants by way of notice and the participants of the guaranteed redemption value and the date or the period after which the guarantee applies. Okay, that's in terms of notification to participants on the guarantee. And then lastly, paragraph 6, disclosure requirements. Right. Alright, where a scheme offers a guarantee which is not, underline this one, are not in accordance with this appendix. Right. So all guarantee must be written, must be agreed on based on what is prescribed in this appendix. Alright. Where a scheme offers a guarantee which is not in accordance with this appendix, all communication relating to the scheme should carry a prominent statement: there is not a capital guaranteed fund. Right, very, very clear. Right, you must comply with the provisions in this particular appendix, in this code, in terms of a guarantee, capital guaranteed fund. All right. If it's not in accordance with the appendix, then a prominent statement must be: is not a guaranteed fund. Alright? A scheme which complies with this appendix, alright, but offers a guarantee covering less than 100% of the capital invested by the participant may state that the scheme has a guarantee, provided that it is stated clearly and prominently that the guarantee covers only X percent, right? 90%, 70%, whatever percent of the capital invested. And the scheme's name does not contain the words guarantee, assured, insured, or warranty. Nor does the scheme hold itself as a capital guaranteed fund in any other way. Alright? That means it's not guaranteed. It's not a full guarantee. Alright? So those are the disclosure requirements in terms of the guarantee. Alright? In the capital guaranteed funds under this code. Okay, I think I've completed this chapter 12 in terms of the revised code on collective investment schemes. Thank you.